I'm James Justt, and this is Libertarian Counterpoint. With me today is Kalish Morrow. She's running for City Council of Hanford, and Nickolas Wildstar, who's running for Mayor of Fresno. Kalish, we're going to start with you today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you became a Libertarian and kind of your background on why you and what brought you up to the decision on to run for City Council?
I want to say that I switched parties from the Democratic Party over to Libertarian. Oh boy, when was it? It was a while back. But it wasn't until I decided to run for City Council back in 2016 that I got involved with the party. To back it up a little bit, I opened up a business in our downtown and was just really involved in the community. I got on the board with our Main Street program and just started seeing a lot of the roadblocks that we were experiencing as businesses and whatnot. Kind of started becoming more vocal in town, and before I knew it, I was running for City Council. But when I went to go get the endorsement from our local affiliate there, that's when I met Kenneth Brent Olson, who is now our vice chair here at the state party, and got involved. He's really good at voluntelling you to do something.
Yeah. A volun order. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I was already involved in so many other organizations in town. I was like, oh, Libertarian Party, like, oh, man, like, yeah, no, it's not something I'm really going to get into. And then I became treasurer. And then I became vice chair, and now I'm chair of Kings County. So anyway, yeah, that's how I got to be involved with the party. And it just keeps on going from there too.
Yeah, that kind of happens. Is next thing you know, I wasn't even involved. My better half became secretary here at the local party, and then a year later I'm vice chair. And so, the same thing happens. Like I recently just filed paperwork to run as a write-in candidate for my local assembly district because there's no one running against the incumbent. And so, but these things just happen. You're a libertarian. Next thing you know, you're running for office. You're inviting the chair. You're on TV. I was, 9 months ago, I had no idea that I'd be sitting here on TV or running for office or all these various things that now all of a sudden are routine. And so, Nickolas, why don't you want to give us our viewers a bit of your background and how you became libertarian
Sure.
and all that kind of thing?
Well, I thought if I ever been on TV, it was going to be as a superstar musician. So I actually moved to California from Wisconsin about 20 years ago to pursue a career in music and, had my hits and misses and all of that stuff, but decided to go at it alone as an independent musician. And had quite a few successes where a few of my songs were placed in movies. I have one in Scary Movie 4. And I was basically on the brink of the technological revolution. So I was one of the first musicians to have my music on Pandora and iTunes and Spotify, all of the streaming services before it became popular. So I've gained some successes there as a musician and pretty much self-made. But like I said, I wanted to pretty much become a musician. That's why I moved out here. And after 9/11, my music started to take on more of a political tone. So I started to get involved in the Occupy Wall Street movement after being disappointed by the election of Barack Obama as a longtime Democrat, and seeing all of their failures. Obama just, to me, was the last straw, especially as a black man, a month into his, presidency. As much as he talked about, we're going to get rid of Wall Street and help out the community, next thing you know, a month in, he's bailing out the banks and, getting $500,000 from Goldman Sachs. And you're like, this is not the guy I signed up for. So I immediately started becoming more anti-government, so to speak. And that's why I became an anonymous activist and, popped on my Guy Fawkes mask and got out there with the Occupy Wall Street activists. But I still saw a need for government. It was still doing things. And after 9/11, of course, seeing the effects of it, the Patriot Act, them tracking our books that we're reading, I'm going to the library And the books that I'm reading are being tracked by the library, you know. I remember flying before the TSA and, you know, having family members greet me at the gate. Now, you know, it's just a complete disconnect. And it seemed like government took over. And I still felt like, again, if we wanted to make those changes, we had to do it politically. And that's when I got involved in the Ron Paul revolution of 2012, because I didn't even know that he actually ran against Obama in 2008, because I was so disillusioned by the two-party system, you know. So hearing him speak of libertarianism and ending the Federal Reserve, and, you know, it just all rang a bell. And I then became more politically involved and, you know, got involved as a candidate myself.
That's great. Well, let's go ahead and start moving on to some issues. Kalish, I'm going to change order here a little bit. Kalish, let's talk about economic development. You're in the small town, and how is the economic development in your Central Valley? Because you've got the farmlands, plus, you know, it's a unique environment down there. And so I think maybe our viewers, you know, sitting here in Sacramento, we're kind of close to farmland, but it's not the same thing as you guys are down there. So maybe you guys could.
Yeah, we've got a lot of ag there, which I think is where the natural progression was to get a lot more marijuana growers coming in. And that was a big to-do because we are in a very conservative area, which, you know, is great financially, but when it comes to those social issues, it was a lot of push, but they were able to get it through. So we've got, I lost track of how many, at least a couple, I want to say one or two growers that are there. And it started off with, it was just going to be medical cannabis. And that's how they were able to get the foot in the door. And, you know, council conceded to that. Okay, well, it's medical. Well, then the state laws changed. And I think it had to do with the deliveries now, you know, so it was like, okay, they weren't going to do dispensaries or anything like that. Well, now we've got deliveries that can come into town. Well, we might as well be getting the taxpayer dollars, so let's do that. So now we've got approvals for a couple of marijuana dispensaries they'll be opening up. I think one of our council members is trying to get at least like a third one, you know, just some of those steps. But, you know, aside from that, though, we've got Visalia, which is right next to us. They have a very booming downtown, booming economy there. Meanwhile, Hanford keeps losing businesses. You know, we get a little bit of growth here, but then a lot of blight here, and we just have some of the craziest zoning. Like we have protective zoning. I think a while back we used to do green belting, which is what Visalia adopted from us. And then we wanted to have like the mall come in back in the 90s and stuff. So instead of having a green belt, they changed over to this protective zoning. To, you know, certain businesses couldn't open up outside of our downtown. And it seemed like a good idea at the time. And, you know, part of me thinks that it did help our downtown for a little while. But now that things are growing and our mall is dying, it's time for us to release some of that zoning, change things up, you know, and a lot of people, because, you know, I'm an advocate for our downtown, and I have, you know, one of my things, if we're going to take this tool away from our downtown, let's give them a better tool. Let's do special permitting so we can get more businesses or, you know, renovations done on our dilapidated buildings. We need to put moratoriums on all of our fees, you know, and make it a lot more business friendly to get more business interest.
Get out the way, if nothing else, get out the way, right? If you're not going to help, you can at least get out the way.
Absolutely.
You know?
I think there was a song there. You can't say all the lyrics on TV. But.
Right. Yes, you can. Move. Get out the way. You know?
I mean, it seems like we're in such a... But you talk about conservative neighborhoods, but here in Sacramento, we're a very liberal area, but we can't even get like an marijuana economic development zone in the ghetto because they're afraid of the negative element it will bring. It's like, it's a ghetto. You're not going to bring negative.
How can they get any worse? You know?
You know, you've got homeless living on the streets. You've got, you know, people who are struggling. You've got multiple families living in the same houses because we can't afford housing. But somehow bringing in, you know, new economic development is going to make the neighborhood worse, not better. It makes no sense. which brings me to you and your Fresno First Initiative. I was reading this thing over the other day.
Right.
It is quite a large platform. Maybe you could kind of give
It's
us
jam-packed of all I would love to do. You know?
Maybe you could give us the kind of condensed version of that for our viewers here.
I would love to. Well, the one complaint about most people living in whatever city that you're in, I'm sure Kalish has experienced this and yourself, is that all of your tax dollars goes everywhere else. You know, whether it be another city, another state, or God knows where, you know. So one thing I would love to do is make sure that our tax dollars are in Fresno, are being kept in Fresno. So especially seeing as, you know, with the development of the high-speed rail that won't ever be built, and if it does ever, it'll be slow as ever. What I would like to do is actually keep our taxes, our money, and actually build a transportation system that will work, like a maglev system that's being used in Beijing, China, or maybe a hyperloop that's currently being developed in other countries as well as out in the Midwest. So if we can, as well as in Nevada, I believe. So if we can, you know, entice someone like Elon Musk of Tesla to come here, or Virgin to come here in Fresno, build that hyperloop or maglev system and get people going on this, you know, state-of-the-art transportation system, I'm pretty sure that'll create more jobs, and that'll also get the local economy booming once again, as well as revitalize the area with, you know, more industry, more businesses. And that's exactly what we want to see more so as well. That's actually tied into another thing that I would like to do, is get more of the financial sector of Fresno going. So what I would like to also do is develop a People's Bank of Fresno. That way we can help those businesses, those legal cannabis businesses, actually put their money in the bank, you know, safely, and instead of having to hide it under their mattress. So with this People's Bank of Fresno, we have people of the community, especially those, you know, of the Black and brown community that seem to be disparaged when it comes to getting loans from some of the bigger banks. They'll be able to come into the People's Bank of Fresno and get interest-free loans, you know, and this also be money going back to revitalize the community. A part of that also, what I would like to do is create our own public utility, which will have our own water and power department. So we won't have to rely on PG&E and what they're doing, or Gavin Newsom if he decides to create a state-controlled, you know, utility. So we'll be independent of that. So we won't have to rely on if they shut off the power switch one day, and we won't, you know, rolling blackouts. So with this public utility, it will be focused on renewable energies, solar power, you know, hydro power, etc., to create the energy, and as well as the water. What I would like to do is create these atmospheric water generators, as they're called. They're literally machines that make water out of thin air. So
It's like the Star Wars things where Luke Skywalker, you know, in the beginning of the Star Wars, he's out there, the moisture farm.
Exactly. Yeah. You see? Yeah. And they actually have this technology already. So why are we using this to help the farmers that are experiencing the drought and, you know, growing food that we, the people, need? You know, California creates half of the nation's food supply. You know, a great majority of that comes from the Central Valley, agriculture area. So I definitely want to make sure we have that option, and people will have this available to them. And since they're paying for it out of their tax dollars, any profits from that will go back to the people's pockets. So if we have any extra energy that we're selling off to some of these bigger businesses that need more power to run their company, or, you know, another city or state or whatever the case may be, that money will go back into people's pockets. And essentially, everyone living there will get free power. How about that? Free power, free water. And I want to beautify the city. I mean, as beautiful as Fresno is, people would love to see more parks. They attempted to pass a proposition that would have raised taxes. I believe that those parks could be built with more or less government red tape, preventing those private businesses. Let's say, for instance, Barnes and Noble wants to come along and build a park. hey, I'm pretty sure the people wouldn't mind if Barnes & Noble sponsored a local park. So.
Well, New York City has parks sponsored by local businesses or philanthropists or whatever it is. They have parks that do this. And so it's not like it's a concept that hasn't been tried before. It hasn't worked.
Right. And I'm just compiling it all into one so we can see how it works to alleviate all of the problems that we're experiencing as a community, whether it be the rolling blackouts that from PG&E or the water shortages, or even the food shortages. We unfortunately have families that go hungry even though we have tons of food. So I would also like to see more community gardens be built, more sidewalk gardens be built, where if you're walking down a residential neighborhood, you have fruits and vegetables growing right there on the sidewalk.
Well, I know in some neighborhoods it's actually illegal to plant fruits and vegetables in your front yard. You can plant them in your backyard, but you can't plant them in your front yard because it's going to hurt the property value of your next door neighbor or something.
That's ridiculous.
I was like, when is resale value actually the actual property value? It's part of property value. It's not the full rate of property value. Use value. I live in the house my grandfather built, and he passed it on to the generations, and hopefully I get to pass it on to future generations, to my grandchildren, and like I pass it on to me, I get to pass it on to my grandchildren, and that's what the American dream used to be, right? You didn't buy a house so you could sell it and move to Florida or Arizona and live like a king, right? You bought the house so you could pass it on for future generations.
Exactly.
So they had an economic floor that they would have it difficult to fall behind. It's not that you can't fall below the floor, but it becomes more difficult to fall below the floor. When I was almost homeless in San Diego, Chula Vista technically, but my family rescued me, came back. I had a place to go. I had a place in my family. I was like, we able to rebuild my life, and so now I'm back here. And so that kind of economic development is actually needed, and we also need to stop preventing people. But that actually brings me back to the homeless question. And I apologize for me moving my head here. Let's go back to the homeless. Homeless is an issue of intense complexity. So how do we find the short and long-term solutions? There are short-term solutions, right? Because we have to get people off the streets. But the actual solution is more long-term, right? How do we prevent housing costs and cost of living from getting out? So is there anything, and each Fresno and Hanford are going to have different solutions. So what about Hanford?
So Hanford, I know that we had a coalition of different organizations that were coming together. So we had ones that were addressing mental health and other ones that were providing a home for people struggling with dependency and drug abuse issues and whatnot. So a bunch of these different organizations have been really great. They came together, created that co-op kind of thing. Recently, the city has now taken it upon themselves to become the facilitator for that co-op. So from what I can tell, they've kind of disbanded doing it privately and have now joined forces with the city. And it just kind of makes me wonder just how much the city is actually going to be able to do, or how much it's going to cost us. I was looking through some of the minutes recently, and I maybe I'm interpreting it wrong, but I want to say that I saw something where like a plan was going to be put in place, and it was going to cost $30,000 for a plan. Maybe there's, I didn't go to the meeting, there might be more things to the $30,000, but from what I'm reading just on black and white, it looks like just a plan. And, that's what we see, like just this hyperinflation of costs when it comes to government stuff. So I think if it worked a little bit more like where there was that co-op, but we have government liaisons coming in to be that facilitator when there's, needing some sort of permission from government or whatever.
Yeah, when you need some kind of service, there's some kind of conflict, you need some kind of service from the government. It happens.
Yeah, or we need this property for whatever. What do you know about this? What do we need to do to acquire this property? Who owns it? Or getting the zoning change where we can do this. It's sometimes things like that. It speeds it up when you have like a government liaison there. But then, the long term though, it's definitely going to be reducing all those regulations. I think LA's a great case where there was a guy, I remember, he built a bunch of like just tiny little sheds for peoples to go and live in, and it was helping out the homeless. He was just doing out of the goodness of his heart.
Right.
LA came in and repossessed
And find them.
Did that, then you got the homeless. They're just like, what's up, man? Like, my
Right.
stuff. Like, it was all in there. It was safe. I was able to get clean. I was able to go to interviews, and you just screwed me over again.
Exactly.
And now the city's going, okay, well, now we've got this issue. Let us address it.
Right.
Well, their own regulations got in the way of them. It was taking too long for them to build the housing because their own regulations are so burdensome that they finally had to go and do like an emergency rezoning or fix their ordinance or whatever to allow themselves to build homeless shelters.
Yeah. I think I read somewhere in LA, that just LA is spending $1 billion a year on homelessness. Just LA. And I actually was reading something about what we now call the homelessness industrial complex. It's, where Eisenhower talked about the military industrial complex, but if you actually look across the government landscape, there's all these industrial complexes. They all exist all over the place. The educational industrial complex, the police industrial complex, the healthcare industrial complex, and the homeless industrial complex is the latest one. It's a big problem up in Seattle, and it's a growing problem here in Sacramento. How are we going to prevent that kind of thing in Fresno?
Well, one of the first things I would like to do is actually build homes. The one thing government, refuses to do is, despite them being delegated these millions of dollars, in government funding or grants or whatever the case may be, they don't build homes. So I would like to take some of the underdeveloped land in Fresno and actually build what are called 3D printed homes. You can Google them. But yeah, these 3D printed homes can be built in less than 24 hours for less than $5,000 each. So, I mean, if we just took a small area, built 100 of these homes and immediately house those people, families that are out on the street that maybe have small children or dealing with some mental health issue that needs immediate attention, or our military veterans or young people even. Believe it or not, the majority of the homeless community has a great population of teenagers. So we need to help those teenagers get off the street, and for whatever reason they're being denied entry into these programs that would help them get housing. And that's another issue, like Kalish brought up, is government has created all of these programs that are too burdensome. It takes too long to go through the qualification process for them to get that help. So, of course, eliminating all of those provisions to expedite things would be best, of course. And another thing I would like to do is create a mental health response team to actually go out there and provide care for those people that do have mental health issues, instead of sending out police and wasting taxpayers' dollars on throwing those people in jail.
Yeah, I've always said that we've got three main types of homeless problems. We've got the long-term homeless. Like, I've had a guy who I've been giving my recycling to for over a decade. Every couple of weeks he comes in, he picks up all my recycling, and he essentially, I don't know, likes being homeless is probably the wrong word. He doesn't fit into normal society. In the days past, he would have been a mountain man, he would have been, a trapper, that kind of thing. He doesn't fit in society anymore. And so he's a perfectly great guy, but you wouldn't want to, he doesn't fit in society. So you've got that kind of homeless, and how do you deal with that? And that's one problem. And then you've got the transitional homeless, people who have, for whatever reason, they've lost a job, or they don't have family, don't have a family safety net to take care when they have an issue with rent, and so they're homeless for a short period of time, a month or two, while they get themselves. They're still working, they're still a functional human being, but they're not able to get back onto this track. It's hard once you get to nothing. It's hard to get back to one, right? It's getting that going is the hardest part. And then you've got the other kind of homeless is the drug addict and the person who have gotten there from their own bad choices. And so we have to deal with these three things as three distinct tools. We've got three distinct problems, so we have to have three distinct tools to deal with them. And you got the short-term solutions. So let's get some houses. Let's get these people off the streets, or if nothing else, let's get some bathrooms to use, some place to clean up, right? If you're not going to have them a place to sleep, let's leave them a place where they can go to the bathroom and clean up.
Right.
And some basic sanitation, please.
Yeah.
If nothing else, some basic
But that
humanities.
short-term solution is the long-term solution, because that's really all they're looking for, is to get off of the street. Like you said, you have those certain group of people that, are choosing to be on the streets, and that's fine. Vagrancy shouldn't be a crime. But that's how we're that's how we're doing it right now.
Yeah, but
you know?
that percentage is actually fairly low. If it was just those the kind of the mountain man person who
Right.
doesn't want that's just so low. We actually doesn't really worry
And
about it.
I'm pretty sure if you gave them the facilities like adequate public bathrooms to use, and you probably wouldn't see them, living on the actual sidewalk.
Actually, those people are actually some of the most civil homeless people I know. They don't aggravate anybody. They ask you for change, but they don't do it in an aggressive manner.
Right.
It's kind of the other groups that kind of get aggressive because they're desperate. Whether they're desperate for drugs or desperate for mental ill or desperate just to get their family off the street or fed,
Right.
they're desperate. And when people are desperate, they do desperate things.
Exactly.
And the other group of people, they're not desperate. They're kind of living the life they've chosen to live, even though they don't necessarily like it. And so, they prefer to be a mountain man or a
Right.
trapper in the old days, but
Traveler.
But society nowadays
Right,
is too
yeah.
complex,
A
right?
vagabond.
And all right, we've got a few minutes left. Let's go back to we were talking, I think the last show, a little bit about charter cities. And Sacramento is a charter city, and it gives us a little bit of protection. We get to have SMUD, we get to have our own public utility, so we get cheaper electric rates, and we have some protections from some of the stuff that Sacramento does over our water, even though we ended up getting forced to have water meters when we didn't used to.
Yeah, it's obviously not perfect, but at least it gives you a little bit of pushback when it comes to Sacramento, a little bit more say in what your tax dollars are paying for, or being able to keep some of your tax dollars within your city. So Needles, California is a great example of them really using their charter to the full extent, where they became a Second Amendment city, sanctuary city. They were just finding that, their argument was they're so close to the Nevada border, and you got so many people with, access to so many guns. Well, let our people protect themselves with their own guns. So, that's how they were able to kind of push that through and, get the city officials to agree to that. There's different ways that you can go about having a little bit more autonomy.
Well, the sanctuary cities thing is kind of interesting here. The Democrats here in California love sanctuary cities when they were for illegal aliens, which is fine. I have no problems with sanctuary cities for illegals. But then when it's sanctuary cities for the Second Amendment, it's somehow a massive. We can't do that. We don't have the authority to do that. Right. It's like, well,
Right.
the cities have the authority to do these kind of things, or
Whatever
they
they want.
don't,
Yeah.
right?
And that was like the interesting thing. It was like, well, if you're going to do a sanctuary city, we're going to do a sanctuary city, and we're going to mix it up.
The plan has to kind of work for everybody, right?
Exactly.
If you're picking and choosing when you get to apply your morality, then it's not really a morality.
Yeah.
It's just
Right.
your feelings. And that's about all the time we have today. I'd like to thank our guests for appearing and for coming so far. Join us next week where we can finish our discussion. Nickolas, your website is?
Wildstar2020.com.
And you can be found on Facebook.
Facebook, yeah. Kalish Morrow for Hanford City Council.
And for information about this, you can go to libertariancounterpoint.com. If you're watching us on YouTube, please press all the buttons. We greatly appreciate it. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter. And from all of us here at Libertarian Counterpoint, we thank you for watching, and please remember to love everybody.